Hello, everyone. This is Angela Gartner, editor at Northeast Ohio Parent Magazine. Today we have Heather Trunka. She is the Injury Prevention Supervisor at Akron Children's Hospital. And we have Holly Papina from Akron Children's Hospital. Today we're going to talk about summer safety. With us, summer fun season has arrived, and while we're all still dealing with the COVID-19 outbreak, right now we want to talk about, but we don't want to lose the message of the summer season's here, and we also have to think safety. And that's why we're going to talk about how to keep your family safe this season. And also some of the impacts of the COVID-19 outbreak. Welcome, Holly and Heather. I appreciate you guys joining us today. First, Heather, I wanted to talk to you about, with so many schools closed, so many local community schools, so many local community schools closed, but also we're seeing a lot of community pools being used.
Yeah.
And, so many families will still be hitting the water, though, whether at home or the beach. So according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the leading cause of injury death for children ages 1 through 4 is drowning. And so how do we keep families safe around the water this summer?
So swimming pools are one of those things that come Memorial Day at Akron Children's Hospital, we become very aware of the dangers around water, even though we want to make sure that message is shared all throughout the year. But here in Ohio, our swimming pool season tends to start around Memorial Day once it finally stops snowing. But our kids 1 to 4 are greatest risk for drowning, but kids up to 14, we see drowning within that top 10 injuries. And so it's something that we pay special attention to when we talk about safety. And some of the things that we want parents to be aware of is that we need lots of layers of safety when it comes to pools. So not just a fence, not just a gate, but making sure that we're taking the steps to protect our kids in and around the water. We talked a little bit before about how our kids 1 to 4 tend to drown during non-swimming times, and what does that mean? So many of us are working from home. I'm sitting in my backyard right now, and so we're on conference calls, and we're deep into a spreadsheet, and our attention might not be 100% on our kids. They may be outside playing and exploring, and those are the opportunities that we want to make sure that our kids are safest around the water. It doesn't just have to be an in-ground pool. Our above-ground pools, our temporary pools, our kiddie pools, our water tables, buckets of water, all pose a risk to our littlest kids.
And can you talk a little bit about flotation devices and, some of the floaties that people use? What is safe?
So there's a lot of different things out in the market, and I think the most important thing to remember is that floaties and life jackets are great additions to safety, but they don't drown-proof your child. So we love puddle jumpers, and so most people know what a puddle jumper is. It's around the arms and around the chest. They are Coast Guard approved flotation devices. They're wonderful for backyard swimming pools because it allows the child to still move and jump and swim and play, but still keeping them above the water. So they will float the child, but if the child ends up head first into the water, that child still has to have that ability to flip themselves over.
And as we talk about water safety, we have to think about what's over us, which is the big sun. So,
yes.
And, can you talk a little bit about, sunscreen and, because I know at the store you can get 50 or you can get 100 now. So what is kind of the sunscreen requirements for kids and even parents too? We can't forget the parents when they're sitting at the non-contact sports games like baseball,
Right. So the one thing that we recommend is a broad spectrum sunscreen, so that protects against the UVB and the UVA rays of the sun. We at minimum want you to use a 15 SPF, 15 to 35, but the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as other research, really doesn't have strong recommendations above 50. So 50 is usually that max that you need. More than that, you're going to be paying more money for those higher SPFs, but not really getting much more protection. For our littlest kids, those under 6 months old, we want them to not be in the sun, not to be in the direct sun. If they do need to be in the sun, make sure that we're using layers of light cotton clothes so they're not getting overheated, but their skin is covered. Hats for everyone, sunglasses for everyone, making sure that we're reapplying that sunscreen. If you're not sweating and not swimming every 2 hours, if you are sweating, if you are swimming, if you've dried off, we want to make sure that you're doing that every half hour or so if you're swimming or once you've gotten out of that water. So, but the important thing about sunscreen is don't put that sunscreen on outside and jump right in the pool. We want it to sit and wait on your skin for about 15 to 30 minutes before you go outside. That spray sunscreen is great, especially for our tweens and adolescent kids who are apprehensive and argumentative about sunscreen. But we want to make sure that we're still rubbing that. We've all seen the pictures of the spray tan snake on chests and back. So we want to make sure that we're rubbing that. We don't want to use those aerosol sunscreens on our littlest kids who can't hold their breath. We never want to use those sprays on our face. If that's your only option, we want you to squirt it into your hands, rub your hands together, and then put it on your face. We also really like sunscreen that's got zinc or titanium dioxide in it. That's that sunscreen that still kind of stays on your skin. It doesn't rub in all the way. That's the best protectant for your face and as well for our little kids. And they make it really fun. Instead of that old, lifeguard white nose, they make them in really fun colors so the kids are willing to put it on. But who wouldn't want to turn their skin bright red, blue, or purple? So,
And a lot of the trending now for like parents is UV clothing.
yeah.
Can you talk about any of that?
UV clothing is our favorite. We love those layers, anywhere we can actually put that barrier on the skin. Most UV clothing provides you that 50 SPF, and so it's a great alternative. If you have a child who really doesn't like sunscreen, then you're wearing that shirt and then we're putting sunscreen on all those exposed areas. Or if you're a mom like me, we do both. So we like layers in our house. So we'll do sunscreen first and then the SPF clothing, which is really a wonderful. I wish they had that kind of thing when we were little.
And is it a myth where if you're in the shade, you're okay? Do you still need sunscreen if you're in the shade?
Yeah, you still need sunscreen. You still need sunscreen on a cloudy day. It's not just because it's not blasting the sun doesn't mean you don't need that protection. And we really want to do a good job of protecting the skin of all kids, but also adults. And if your kids see you putting on sunscreen, they're more likely to be willing to put on sunscreen. But in the off chance, if you do get a sunburn, there's some certain things that you need to kind of be aware of, especially with kids. There's a lot of aloe products out there that have lidocaine in them as a pain relief, and we don't want to use those on kids. That can actually lead to an accidental poisoning. So if we are, cool water works great to cool that skin down, or just plain aloe. And then if there's blisters or fever or extreme pain that's not kind of dulled with Tylenol or ibuprofen, that's when we want to reach out to our pediatricians.
And, the one thing actually we haven't discussed yet too is making sure, how do we make sure to keep getting water in our kids? Because, with all the Gatorades and, obviously we're trying not to, I think a lot of parents are trying not to do as many sugary drinks. What is, water is important. How do we get water in our kids definitely as it gets hotter? And is there any other drink that is okay, to try?
Sure. We love water. Water's great. Make water fun. Fruit frozen in ice cubes, fruit put into the water makes it really fun for kids and gives it that kind of fun flavor without adding a lot of sugar. Gatorade in moderation's okay. 100% fruit juice in moderation is okay. But really, we want to hit home the importance of water. And so for every 30 minutes that a kid is outside, we want them to take at least 3 big gulps of water, 3 big swallows of water. And so making sure that they're staying hydrated. If they are dry mouth, we've missed that mark of getting them hydrated. And so we want to make sure that we are making sure that we're drinking as much water as possible. For our kiddos that play sports, that hydration starts the day before. And so if we've got a big soccer tournament, we're starting to have more of those now with baseball being allowed, making sure the day before that we're getting enough water, as well as at the event. If our mouth is dry, if we've stopped sweating, if we're a little incoherent or a little confused, that's when that's an emergency. We want to get them out of the sun. We want to get them cooled down and potentially seek medical care.
And with the COVID-19 outbreak, we've been in our houses, social distancing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, about how parents and families, can still get out, social distance, and also wash their hands. So if we can talk a little bit about, can we get outside? How can we wash our hands when we're at the park or social, definitely still social distancing from others, but we can still get outside as a family, as it always said.
Right. We want families to go outside, enjoy our national parks, enjoy our metro parks and our city parks. It's a great opportunity. It's a great way to get exercise. And it's a great way to socially distance if we're aware that parks are busy. My family, for instance, we have a plan A and a plan B. If we show up to our first park and it's really busy and we're having trouble finding a parking spot, we head to our second option. And so having those alternative locations and plans are always great. We have toddlers and teenagers in our family, and so really talking about safety, and kids have a wonderful ability of understanding things far more than we give them credit for. And so making sure they understand about what it means to give families space when we're at the park, but also don't be afraid to play in the dirt and play in the creek and throw rocks and pick up sticks and get your hands dirty. But once those hands are dirty and you're stopping for that picnic, we do want to make sure that if they're visibly dirty, we are washing them. And so how do you do that when the bathrooms are closed, or you might not have access? And so what we really like is that foaming hand soap. It does a great job. You don't need a lot of water to make it work. So put on a little foam hand soap, scrub up, make sure we're hitting those thumbs and in between our fingers, and then bringing extra water. We bring an extra gallon of water just for hand washing. If they're not visibly dirty and you have hand sanitizer, I know hand sanitizer is hit or miss when we're at the store, but hand sanitizer is great when they're not visibly dirty. But once we come inside, we're in the house, we're getting ready for our picnic, we do want to actually use soap and water.
And can you tell, I know the best practices of hand washing to teach little kids and making sure that they're just not rinsing their hands through the waters, and even with teenagers that sometimes tend to say, I washed my hands, and you hear the water run for like a second. So
right, my teenagers are worse than my toddlers. Toddlers will always want to play in the water, and so making it fun for our little kids to wash our hands, but also going through the steps with them. And so maybe it's a step stool at the kitchen sink, and we talk about, we wet our hands, we put soap, and then we're scrubbing the fronts and the backs, and we're getting in between our fingers and scrubbing our thumbs and getting our fingertips and going through those same steps in the same order with our little kids. The little kids love that order and gauge. So they can make sure they kind of check those things off. Singing a fun song. We have a hand washing song that we sing. We sing Maui's You're Welcome, and we sing that song when we wash our hands, and it's just become our pattern. For our teenagers, making sure they're actually washing their hands. Not many are willing to stand at the sink and, listen to that rehearse, and that technical teaching of skills, but, doing the best you can with your teenagers is, anything is better than nothing, but just encouraging that hand washing when they come in the house.
And as we go outdoors, we want to, whether we're biking or hiking, can you talk a little bit about, is there any outdoor elements we should be watching out for this summer? And I know there's some normal things, and especially whether we're outdoors during the day or even at night, because I know, the little ants are crawling around, and I'm sure there's a lot of other bugs coming too. So
we want to encourage people to do those normal things that feel good and are just bring back the funness of summer, and bike riding is one of those. We also know that bike helmets are so important, especially for our kids, but also for adults. Most parents don't know this, but if you wear your helmet as a parent on a bicycle, your child, no matter what their age is over 80% more likely to put on a bike helmet unprompted if the parent does. And so making sure that we're riding bikes. Also talking about making sure that we're aware. So kids under 12, we want them on the sidewalk. But we need to talk about things like driveways and crossing the road and making sure that we're aware of those around us, because as drivers, we're distracted. We all know that we're more distracted than ever. And especially during the day when we're not used to kids being out on bikes, making sure that our kids are aware that, they need to stop and be aware for cars, as well as cars aware for bikes. And so I think surprising to a lot of parents is kids under 10 can't judge the speed of a car. They have no idea if they're going 60 or if they're going 15 miles an hour. And so that's why those kiddos, we want to make sure that we have an adult with them. We don't let them ride free through the neighborhood because they don't have that ability to judge speed. And so crossing streets, cars pulling in, is something they just don't have that ability to do.
And then, so what kind I know we all heard about the murder hornets, but otherwise, is there any other things that we should look for? Especially, what are some first aid kind of tips just general first aid tips for mosquito bites and bee stings, and, because unfortunately, with kids out, families outdoor, hopefully we don't want to experience that, but how can we prevent it? And then maybe if it's something does happen, how can we treat it?
Yeah, the Department of Agriculture is saying that this is going to be a particularly bad year for ticks. And so we want to make sure that we are using bug spray. DEET, that's 30% is what we want to use on kids. And most of those brands, those deep wood brands and just regular, you want to make sure that it's got that DEET in it. And it's 30%. Most are anywhere between 20 and 30. We just don't want to go over that threshold of 30 for kids. And we can use bug spray on kids 2 months old and older. So if you're hitting up the campsites this year, instead of taking that beach vacation, we want to make sure that we're using that bug spray. Also taking the opportunity to wash it off when we can. So you're having that fun evening bonfire, making s'mores, making sure we're safe around that fire. And before we're coming into bed, we're doing that bath to wash that DEET off.
And then, so I think one of the last things I wanted to talk about, well, actually we got a couple more things, but, a lot of parents, it's, we're going to be more out and about, and what about making sure, like, to remember about kids in hot cars? And I know that the weather is getting warmer, it's beautiful out. What can we talk about with making sure that our kids are safe, in not just outside the car, but inside the car?
So far in the United States in 2020, we've had 2 children die in hot cars, and that number is significantly lower than most years. Usually by this point in the year, we have about 20 children who have died in hot cars. And I think this big misconception is that I would never do that. I could never forget my child. But the opportunity is there. Again, as our routines are very different than what they normally are. We may not be dropping our child off at childcare. Maybe we're dropping them off at my sister's house and then going into work. And so with our routines being different, that opportunity to leave a child in the car arises. And so we want to make sure that we're never leaving our children in a car ever, not even for a minute, not to run to the gas station to pick up a cup of coffee, not to run into the grocery store because you don't want to expose them to potential infections in the store, that if they can't come with us, then they are staying home. One of our deaths this year, again, not in Ohio, but across the US, was a child who crawled into a car in his own garage in a hot state. It was in April and it was hot, and he got in there because he wanted to play driver. And they couldn't find him. And unfortunately, when they did find him, he had already expired. And so teaching our littlest kids that cars are never someplace that we play. Locking your car, even if it's in your garage. But I think one of the important lessons that we teach our kids who have the ability to climb into a car, that, you know, most kids can climb into a car and shut the door, but they can't get the door back open. Is that if they're in a car and they can't get out, that they honk the car horn until somebody comes to get them out, and they don't stop honking until a grown-up comes to let them out. But also, you know, in and around cars, we have a lot of kids who get run over by cars in their own driveway, by even their own parents, older siblings, and just visitors. And so taking that opportunity to teach our kids that we never play behind cars, that we're aware that if a car's moving, but also if we're backing out, I'm letting my partner know, hey, I'm getting ready to leave. Can you make sure that you're watching our littles, so that there's not that opportunity they run after to say goodbye, to get that one more last hug or one more last kiss, and are unfortunately run over or backed over. We see more backing overs than pulling overs. And we think that those cameras are going to protect us, but those cameras aren't fast enough. Our reaction's not fast enough. And also when we have really little kids, sometimes those cameras don't catch them.
Hey, Heather, I've been out in stores and I see lots of, looks like backyard play stuff, because it seems like with everyone canceling all their trips to the beach and vacations, there's going to be a lot of backyard living.
Yeah.
What are some of your key points there? I know the hospital sees a lot of trampoline injuries, but are there any other toys and big backyard things to be careful about?
Yeah, so we have, you're actually getting a picture of my backyard right now, and so we love backyard playgrounds, and but all those same things we want to make sure are safe. That you have mulch for every inch, or for every foot of your playground. You need an inch of mulch or rubber mulch or whatever you need. Making sure that you've got a soft surface if they would flip out or fall off or flip off that swing, that we've got that soft ground for them to fall onto. Trampolines. I can't hide my feelings about trampolines, as well as our orthopedic surgeons at the hospital. We see so many trampoline injuries, and my guess is going to be we're going to see even more this year. Trampolines inherently are not safe. We don't want children under the age of 6. I'm going to make some parents really angry with this statement. Kids under 6 don't belong on trampolines. One child at a time. Where we see the majority of our injuries is more than one child jumping, and so we have that counter jump going on. We see tons and tons of broken arms, broken legs, lots and lots of concussions, and we've seen injuries as severe as neck fractures that have left adults and children paralyzed. And so trampolines, we need to take as much protection as we can. If you do have one, make sure those springs are covered. You have that net. One kid jumps at a time, and when we exit that trampoline, we sit down, scoot to the edge, and slide off. We're not back flipping off that trampoline.
And how important is it for parents to do the wellness checkups every year? And I know especially in the summer where, you know, kids are out of school, maybe schedules are more flexible and the health centers are opening. How important though is the overall wellness checkup, especially during this time?
Well child visits are very important. We've been talking about safety this whole time, but really the foundation for safety is health. And so we want our kids to be as healthy as possible. And those well child visits, in particular for our children under 2, to maintain their vaccination schedule is really important. But also it's super important for our teenagers so we can assess depression, anxiety, mental health, and other growing trends that we see in our kids. But we also want you to know that it's very safe to come to these visits. And I'll pass it off to Holly so she can talk a little bit about what we're doing at the hospital to make it as safe as possible for all of those well child visits.
Yeah, if you haven't been to the doctor's office or the hospital lately, it'll look a little different because of the COVID precautions. So you might be asked to stay in your car until your exam room is open. You might notice markings telling you where to stand when you're checking in. You might notice everyone wearing masks. You definitely should see that. So those are just some of the things you'll notice. Cafeterias are, grab and go, that sort of thing. But they're definitely the safe place to be. And we're really reaching out to all those families that maybe had postponed or canceled elective surgeries or those well child visits. The other thing that I love, I'm just thinking back, my kids are grown now, but I love those well child visits for that anticipatory guidance. That was like a big buzzword I just remember. But, the pediatrician always just seemed to know to talk to you, the parent, and the child at whatever developmental stage is coming up. So if they knew your kid was at that age where peer pressure was a big deal, they would talk about that. If, they knew they were at the age where kids might be starting to be exposed to alcohol and marijuana or vaping, whatever's going on in that world and that age, they were always like a step ahead to kind of tell you about it and to talk to the kids about it on their level.
Well, and definitely the wellness checkups are so important, and a lot of parents have been doing not just wellness, but also other appointments, telehealth as well, that has been being offered with everyone. And we just did actually a story with Akron Children's, who was quoted in the article about the telehealth. Is there any still telehealth options going on in that realm, or are we still? I mean, I feel like it's definitely important to go in the hospital, but for parents who are still looking for telehealth, is that going to still be going on?
Oh yeah, I think you did that interview with Dr. Steve Spalding, and I think that was a real plus, a real takeaway from the pandemic is how everyone loved telehealth and how there's so many wonderful ways it can be used. You're right, it doesn't work in every instance with exams and things like that, but there's a lot you can do. I was just talking with our director of school health, and that is a great use for it. Assuming all the kids get back into their school buildings in the fall, we're going to have a nurse practitioner that can just do a lot, reaching a lot of different schools, a lot of different districts, just one person, because she won't have to take the time to travel. But she can do a lot of looking in ears and seeing rashes and things like that.
So if somebody wants to get more information, whether about all the safety stuff all the safety measures we just talked about, also updates about Akron Children's and what you guys are doing to help the community be safe during COVID and also throughout the summer, where can they go to get information?
www.akronchildrens.org, and follow us on all of our social media. There's a lot of good movie stuff and great patient stories on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you've got your own handles, right, Heather? Your own Safe Kids handles?
Sorry, Holly, I lost you there for a second, but we do have a Safe Kids handle on Twitter at Safe Kids Summit. We, as well as Holly had said, on our website at www.akronchildrens.org, we have a ton of information on injury prevention, specifically related to COVID-19. And then we also have an additional website for car seats, bike helmet safety, and teen driving through the safemobilityproject.com.
Well, I appreciate you guys both being here, Holly and Heather. You guys have been awesome as usual, and I hope to have you back. Again, my name's Angela Gardner. I'm the editor of Northeast Ohio Parent Magazine. You can look for information on us at northeastohioparent.com. But I hope to see you guys again, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.